Hello everyone. This is the introduction and overview of aviation meteorology, what we're going to learn in this course and why we want to, what is motivating us to look at aviation meteorology or study aviation meteorology. And what you need to read is you need to go out on the web and pull up this article. Actually, it's a report from the FAA. It's called Weather-Related Aviation Accident Study 2003 to 2007. And it helps us understand why we study meteorology or aviation meteorology. So why do we? Why are we so concerned about understanding the weather when we fly? Every time we fly, we have risks that we need to manage and minimize. Everything that you do, there is a risk, and you assess those risks, and then you decide whether those risks are acceptable or if you can minimize them and then accept them. And every time you fly, there are risks, and we like to categorize those risks using something called the PAVE checklist. And PAVE stands for Pilot, Aircraft, Environment, and External Pressures. So we can categorize the risks into these different elements or these different places. Of course, pilots, they have risks if they're tired or if they're not trained properly. Aircraft, if aircraft are broken or they're not up to the task. The environment, and actually this is where weather comes in. The weather can be categorized in the environment. And of course, there is more risky weather and less risky weather. And we need to recognize that and decide which types of weather we can accept the risks and which ones we can't. And then finally, there's also external pressures. And external pressures are things like you need to get home, so you need to fly and you'll ignore most of the risks. So those are the different risk elements. So we're going to look at weather specifically. And weather is very important because it influences three different areas or three different categories: the efficiency of the aircraft, the passenger comfort, and also flight safety. So we'll start out first with aircraft efficiency. And what aircraft efficiency is, the airplane is designed to go fast. It's designed to do a job, carry people or boxes or packages to a given location and get there on time faster than a Conestoga wagon. So, can the airplane do what it's designed to do? And there are times when it cannot. As the picture shows, it may be covered with ice. If that's the case, you have to de-ice the airplane. Sometimes you're flying against a headwind and the airplane won't get there on time. So you might have to change altitude to minimize the headwind. Or there are other times when you just can't get to your destination because low ceiling, low visibilities, or perhaps there's thunderstorms. So that will result in the aircraft either staying on the ground or ending up at a different location, and that is not very efficient. Another category is passenger comfort. Of course, when you start flying passengers, you want to make sure that they have a nice, smooth ride. If they don't, then they won't fly in your airline anymore. And if you're just flying by yourself, they won't fly with you anymore. So, of course, weather influences passenger comfort. In other words, we need to find out where there's turbulence and minimize our exposure to turbulence. Probably the most important is flight safety, and that should be paramount, of course. Can we avoid accidents that are caused by weather? The pictures that you see here are two weather-related accidents. One is from Dallas-Fort Worth, and the other one is from, I believe that's Little Rock, Arkansas. And here are all the different accidents across the United States for the past, close to 40 years of flying, almost 50 years, all the way back to 1960. And these are significant aviation weather accidents involving airlines. And you can see when an airline has an accident, a number of people die. So this is something that we try to minimize the risk and make sure pilots understand the risks that are involved. So let's get to the study. The FAA conducted a study from 2003 to 2007, a 10-year study looking over the aviation weather-related accidents that were reported to the National Transportation Safety Board. And this is the FAA's Aviation Safety Information Analysis and Sharing System. So over these few years, looks like 5 years actually, they tracked all accidents and then also weather-related accidents. So specifically, you can see that, for example, in 2003, there were a total of 2,000 accidents, and it generally fluctuated towards the below 2,000. For example, in 2004, you can see there were a total of near 1,900, the same, a little bit up in 2005, and so on and so forth. But never dropped below, or maybe just very briefly below 1,800 accidents. So over this period of time, all of those accidents could be broken down into whether they had weather as a factor, or if they just occurred by other factors, such as pilot error or things like that. And if you look at these numbers, you can see that, weather is a small portion of that. If you do the statistics, it works out to about 20% over this 5-year period. And that's a number that you should remember. 20% of all accidents are weather related. So what kind of weather causes these accidents? The NTSB also took statistics on this, and it turns out that the highest frequency of accidents happened with wind. And you can see there wind was more than almost 3 times as much as the next category, which is low ceilings and low visibilities. The big terrible things that you think cause aviation weather accidents, cause airplanes to crash: thunderstorms, a very, very small percentage. We all identify the risk associated with thunderstorms, so we tend to stay away from them. However, airliners tend to fly in weather every day, and they fly close to thunderstorms, and sometimes they don't manage those risks very well. So wind is the biggest factor. If you look at that even more closely, you'll see that it's mostly gusty wind conditions and also crosswind conditions, and finally tailwinds, but the biggest is gusts and crosswinds. So winds are the biggest cause of accidents, weather-related accidents, for aviation. Now, that includes both airlines and also smaller airplanes, general aviation. In the next video, we're going to break that down and look at the different types of aircraft operations and the types of accidents that occur as a result of the weather. So that concludes this video, and you should watch the next one.